Hey, it's me, Carrie B. It's official. The new Stampin' Up! Catalog for 2022-2023 is live, and you can shop it by visiting the link in the description below. Today, I'm going to be showing you a little experiment that I did with the Stampin' Up! Ink refill bottles. These are the refill bottles that refill ink pads that you see behind me. And I'm going to be showing you a way or two that you can use these besides for refill. So come along with me and I'll take you through a fun experiment. Let's go. I had an idea for a card that used scraps for a birthday cake, like a giant layered birthday cake, and I had put it together some time ago, but I wanted to make it look like it was iced, and I recently finally came up with a solution. I used modeling paste by Liquitex, and then I thought, well, white frosting's kind of boring, and so I decided to try to color it using the Stampin' Ink's refills, just like you would with food coloring in real like frosting. So I also wanted to try a couple of other things because the modeling paste is a little bit heavy. It weighs a little bit more than your typical card making supplies. It's more like an artist medium. So I tried a few different things that Stampin' Up! Offers, including a couple of glues. This is the Tombow glue. It's the one I probably use the most in card making. And I swatched it out in my May swatch book. Here I'm putting some precision fine tip glue into a cup, and you've seen me use this on my windmill video as well as a blingy snowman card video. It's a great epoxy. And then lastly, I used an acrylic paint that I got from when I ordered my Create box. It came with for touch-ups and things like that, but since I'm not using it for that, I decided to play around with it for this. The first color I use is Real Red. Just a couple of drops I figure would give me the pink that I was after, and it did deliver. It has a very frosting-like consistency. It dries matte. And it's, again, like I said, it's got a heavier body to it. It's a little bit on the heavy side, I think, for card making, but it does work for frosting. Second, I used Rich Razzleberry in the Tombow glue, and I was a little curious how this was going to work, what the texture of it was going to be when it dried, because Tombow glue is typically, even though it dries clear, it still remains pretty sticky. And then the fine tip glue pen, again, you know it's going to dry very clear and rubbery, almost like an epoxy, and it worked really well. It takes the color, it maintains a very translucent look, so you could almost paint with it, like for stained glass, maybe filling in windows or bottles, like some of the new weathered bottle punch and stamp that I've noticed that they have in the new catalog. I used crushed curry in this particular case, and it worked really well. You can see that you're going to need a lot of whatever medium you decide to dye because there's waste involved. It sticks to the side of the cup, it sticks to the thing that you're applying it with, and so always plan to make a little bit more than you plan to use. The last color is Pumpkin Pie, and in the acrylic paint it ends up being pretty oxidized looking. I would recommend using a lot more of this dye than you think you might want to. Don't be scared, go ahead and get heavy-handed if you're trying to dye acrylic paint. Especially white, it's a very opaque paint, and it can handle a lot of additive to get the right color that you're after. I let each of these things dry for about 10 minutes, and all of them dried really well except the Tombow. The glue, as you can see, like I mentioned before, remains very sticky. You may have noticed this in your card making process. If you end up with any that sort of comes out the side of whatever you've glued, you'll notice that there's that sticky consistency that's left. So I think I found a good solution. I used a little bit of clear embossing powder, enough to cover the full surface, dump the excess, and then heat You can see here it changes color. The glue is not harmed in any way, doesn't bubble or anything like that, and it seals it so that any of the stickiness is totally gone. This top modeling paste, it's totally dry, and I wanted to just check something real quick while I was thinking about it. I wanted to try to stamp on it. So I took the real red, just like I dyed it with, and I stamped on it, and here's what happened. It worked. It didn't bleed, it didn't run, and it didn't fade over the course of the evening. The next day it still remained. So that's another option. I promised you on my Instagram that I would be taking you through my process of building a scrap cake, and so I'm making sure to do that. Each of these strips of paper is from my scrap pile. You know I like to try to keep a lot of scraps because I just love these papers so much. I get very attached to them. That snail mail, for instance, is one of the first papers that I ordered last June, and I've been just sort of hanging on to it and using it sparingly. Each of these strips is about 1/2 inch in width, and then I make them successively shorter as they go up, almost like a bar graph, and just use them like a crazy giant cake. And I didn't even really pay a lot of attention to what colors I was picking out of my stash. I just grabbed them out as I saw them. So it gives it a little bit more of a random look, a little more cartoony, and I like the way it looks. Like, it just gives it a very fun, easy, casual feeling. Keep the colors bright, depending on who you're making the cake for. I suppose if you were doing an over-the-hill cake, you could, use black, but typically just keep it bright and fun. And then make sure that you're leaving enough room at the top if you want to have a cake topper. In this case, I'm going to be adding the age of the recipient to the top. And the last thing I would say is, as you can see here, I've stacked it from bottom to top. But in order for the layers to work better, I would suggest starting from the top and then stacking toward the bottom, because the way I stacked it this time, the cake layers look a little backwards. So just keep that in mind. Okay, it's time to make the frosting for the cake. So using the process that I did in my experiment, I went ahead and mixed up a new batch, and then this time I wanted to try piping it with a plastic bag, just like you would do with a cake. Of course, I don't have piping tips that are that small, so we're just going to cut the corner off of the bag. Just a disclaimer, do not eat this. It is not real frosting. I know it looks good enough to eat, but if there's any kids watching, please do not do this at home and then eat the modeling paste. It is not edible. Here we go, cutting the corner off the bag and just dot 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 along the top. It gives a piped look. And you can hardly even notice that I stacked the papers backwards. Here I try to see if I can fix it, but no. So I just go ahead and cover it up. And remember what I said about making more of a batch than you think you need? I sort of run out toward the end, so I stand by what I said. Make sure that you're mixing a little bit more than you need, and you can always just throw the rest away. Really trying to get out that last little bit there at the end. Gonna add a little bit of sprinkles. This is glitter. It sticks really well while it's wet. And brush away the excess gently so you don't mess up your piping work. we're going to try that little experiment with the embossing powder. I leaked some of the glue around the edges of the numbers, and I want to make sure that they're not sticky. So I'm going to be putting some of that clear embossing powder over the top, shaking off the excess, and running a heat tool over it for just a minute till it seals it up. I almost forgot the candles. Make sure that you use some rhinestones for the flames and draw in your candles, enough for the person who's having the birthday. And then you put the rhinestones on the top as the flame. Here I'm showing off the Stampin' Write marker in black. It's a double-ended marker with a brush tip and a fine tip marker. They are very handy to have around, water-based, and I use them a lot. I have a few actually on hand. The final touch is going to be the rhinestone flames on the candles. I'm using the Take Your Pick tool by Stampin' Up. This is the spatula attachment that comes with it. And that's about it for me for today. I sure hope you've enjoyed my little tutorial and experiment. I hope you'll have fun trying to make it at home yourself. Thanks for watching, and let's keep in touch.